Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Finding the Extraordinary in the Ordinary. And it's an absolute privilege to be here with John Biethan, who is the president and producer of imaginepodcasting.com. John, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us.
Well, Tracy, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure when I'm on somebody else's media because I'm always doing somebody else, or working with somebody else.
Other side of the mic this time. So we typically do this as a fireside or campfire chat, and so I really like to ask, do you like camping?
Oh yeah, I've camped a lot. If you want to hear the short version is born and raised in Oregon, and in the summertime, if not our family, it would be my father and I would be camping just about every weekend, I should say.
Wow, that is a lot of camping. Do you have a favorite campsite or fireside story?
Well, I will tell you that my father and I used to go fish too. And when I was just a little kid, probably 8 years old or something, we used to go in eastern Oregon and hiked in a couple miles, at least it felt like that to me, to a lake that not many people knew about called Mosquito Lake.
Hmm.
So the reason it was called Mosquito Lake is obvious. It was so full of mosquitoes, but the fishing was great. Yeah, I still tell, I tell people often. It's like, when's the last time you went out for a hike, or when's the last time you've been, to the ocean, or nature's the great balancer.
And we're exploring sort of inherent talents or gifts that you've been given, and if we can talk through a little bit about your career path, because it is one of really spontaneity in a lot of ways. You've been exposed to things and you go, you know what, I think that might be my next chapter. So
Yep.
I leap to your time on Orcas Island, where
Yeah.
you were actually running a hotel, I think, of sorts, and doing some really interesting things and meeting some interesting people. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, sure. So I was, graduated from high school in 1971 and did some music because I was playing music at the time and I was in bands and stuff like that. And I decided to study music, so I went to Portland State University for a period of time, and discovered the classical guitar and studied that seriously for about 5 years. But it was at some point after all that, it was 1978 when through a friend, I met somebody named Louis Gittner who had a organization up on Orcas Island called the Lewis Foundation, which owned the Outlook Inn, established in 1892. And so this was an old country inn. And so I got curious, and one Friday night drove up there and, got off the Washington State Ferry at 1 o'clock in the morning and drove to the Outlook Inn in East Sound and walked in the place and just felt at home. And I woke up the next morning after staying in a room that they had given me and made arrangements to come back in a week or so. And I ended up living there for 7 years. Studying really the work of the foundation was metaphysics, world religion, and nutrition. And we ran this country inn as a means of support for the work that we did. And a lot of the work was hosting conferences. And at the time, there was a woman, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote a book called The 5 Stages of Death and Dying. And for some people listening, I'm sure it'll ring a bell of who she
Mhm.
was. But, so it was a lot of experiential work there, but also running the inn. When I got there, although my mother was a fabulous cook, I never learned anything from her about cooking. And so I started out by washing dishes, and it was washing dishes, and then it was prepping food, then it was, one thing led to another. Next thing you know, I'm the waiting tables and the maitre d, and And then at some point, we got written up in National Geographic's Country Ends of the Northwest, and it was such a fabulous experience with the photographer and the writer that came. They just had a great time, and they put us as the centerfold in that particular issue, Country Ends of the Northwest. And so, there was a lot of skill that I learned there. But we also were publishing books. And the general manager at the time, before I started really running it, bought a computer, and I learned computer skills to help kind of the publishing part of what we were doing moving along. So I was doing sales, and I was doing programming, and I was building computers. And but more importantly, I just really, really loved being and working at the inn and meeting all these people. And I got known as the innkeeper, and I was the innkeeper. So I would have people that would come back year after year after year, same couple, same family, and it was just like old friends.
Mm.
And in fact, I'll just end that story by saying one night Richard Bach and showed up, and I don't know if you know who he was, but he wrote a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. S
Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah. So there was a lot of really well-known people that would come, because it was Orcas Island was a very special place. It was like the Greek islands, but it was
mm.
in off the coast of Washington and very close to Victoria.
Yeah,
So,
gorgeous. I've actually had the privilege of staying there for a few days on Orcas Island, and you know what?
uh-huh.
Just listening to you, really the humility with which you've approached that. Starting as a dishwasher, just embracing every opportunity that sort of presented yourself with curiosity. That's
Yes.
another word that you used. And also, just that um, really living in the moment. And I think those are lessons that so many of us can learn from is how much you can enjoy just your current surroundings by embracing it and embracing what it can do for you and you can do in it.
Yes.
Um, you mentioned that some folks from New Mexico showed up at the hotel, and that sort
Yes.
of opened you up to your next chapter.
There was 7 people staying in the inn, and they were all from New Mexico, 5 individuals and one couple. And they'd never met anybody, each other. And I had never, ever remember in 7 years, because I checked everybody in at some point, ever meeting anybody from New Mexico. So I was enchanted by the conversation, because I had this feeling that one day in my life I might live in the desert. And
Mm.
that night, went to bed and woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning, just kind of bright eyed with this kind of vision, so to speak, or an imagination, if that's what you want to call it, of the road to New Mexico. It was just, and it was very exciting to me. And I just kind of put it off. I just kind of went back to sleep, and bam, an hour or so later, I woke up again, and it just wouldn't leave me alone. So I gave notice, and 5 weeks later, I was gone.
Oh, wow. Just again, a story of courage and spontaneity, which is inspiring. And if I recall, you needed to start over again with humility in New Mexico.
Hmm.
It's not as if you went to a particular job.
And I noticed the Inn at Loretto, which was a hotel down there, was looking for a general manager. So I applied because I thought, I can do that. Simple. And I applied, and I went back for interview after interview after interview. And one morning I had gone to the Plaza Cafe before the next time I was going to go to the Inn at Loretto. And, there was a sign on the door that said waiter wanted. And I just sat there and I thought, do I really want to jump back into 60 hours a week?
Mm.
I mean, general manager at Inn at Loretto would have been great, I'm sure. And I just walked over to the Inn at Loretto and said, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to take the position, because that was kind of the next step. And I walked back to the Plaza Cafe and filled out an application. And the next day I was waiting tables there. And it was like, I thought, this is the best way to get to know this town, all the locals that come in and serve them.
Mm.
And it was fun. And then it was later on I met the operations manager at a publishing company called Bear and Company Publishers, who were really well known for writing a book called The Medicine Cards. And that took me in a whole other another direction.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And if I recall, you were using that a foundation that you had learned at the as the innkeeper over in Orcas Island around computers and computer technology, and you
Mm-hmm.
eventually helped build the publishing platform, if I recall.
Yes. Well, I had done it once at the Lewis Foundation on Orcas, and then I found myself, with this company, Bear and Company, who had a computer somebody donated to them, and they didn't know what to do. So I started writing their software and trying to help them. And it was a 3 month contract, to just basically build the software and stuff. And I found out later that it was the second publishing, excuse me, yeah, second or third publishing software ever written for the industry on a PC, on a personal computer. So, and that was a lot of fun.
What a great accomplishment. And what do you think it is that's inherent to you that makes that computer programming or that creation so interesting, or something you want to pursue?
Back then, it was simply a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
mean, that for me, it was just fun.
You're
And
getting paid to do something you're enjoying. Yeah.
yeah, and I worked extremely hard on it. I mean, to give
Mm.
an example, after I moved to Santa Fe, and I had left the publishing company 6 years later after working there, and started my own software company. But I also was working as an outside IT guy for Coca-Cola there, and the kind of person I am regarding computers during that time. I mean, you could get a degree in computer science and stuff, but that's not the path I took. But it was one day they wanted to do two things. They wanted to get off Outlook and get onto Gmail. And then the other thing is they wanted to put up what's called a Windows server. And I didn't know anything about it, but I bought a library of books and studied it for, I don't know, I want to say a couple of months, but I'm sure it was like 6 weeks. And then then I just got, just made it happen, quite frankly, just because I studied it and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, I tell people it's like, Steve Farber has a book, it's kind of behind me somewhere, called Love is Just Damn Good Business, subtitled Do What You Love in the Service of People Who Love What You Do.
Oh,
And,
that's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and for me, it's been driving me lately because it just helps me focus on well, just all of that. Do what I love to do in the service of people who love what I do. So it's like that's the first question: is what do you do that people really really love? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Just amazing life advice. And you've lived it and played it out and have had a very successful but varied and interesting and rich career in a variety of different things that has really a testimony to embracing what's in front of you and embracing who you are. And I think
Mm.
those are the messages that we really want to carry with these series. Is sometimes we can get ourselves wrapped up too much
Yeah.
in planning and in trying to micromanage our lives, but really it can unfold in front of you if you don't.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And then you're doing podcasting right now. Just give us a window into that and
Yeah.
what led
Sure.
you.
Well, I started in 2004 after discovering it. And it's just the lights went on for me because I realized, oh my gosh, this is like a big game changer. It means anybody with something or nothing to say could actually be heard. It just completely dropped the bar because before that, and I had one company that I worked with that was paying $20,000 a year to be on a radio show for 30 minutes once a week. So I discovered podcasting, and then I was introduced to Roshi Joan Halifax, who had been an archaeologist, discovered Buddhism, and being in Santa Fe, a lot of that kind of stuff was going on. And she had Upaya Zen Center, and somebody said, you know, she does a Dharma talk on Wednesday nights. You might want to go talk to her. So anyway, I attended. They had been recording these things, and I just took the recordings and created a podcast, which is still going on today. And they have a prison program, and those podcast episodes are end up in the prisons and stuff. So it was that, and then I met a comedian, and we just had a ball together doing a show. And then it was Jeffrey Milburn and the Omni Art Salon, which was the first show actually I did because of a great story about Jeffrey and Andy Warhol. So it was just storytelling, and that's what I love to do, you know. So, you know, that was 17 years ago, and then in the middle of a pandemic, I got this brilliant idea to start Imagine Podcasting in July 2020, and put together a team. So it's an agency, and I have a creative director, and you know, a lot of what I do is, you can see the book behind me, you know, Atlas of the Heart. That's Brene Brown's book, and I really love what she does. And one of my favorite clients is actually Elena Armillo, who has the Collective Corner, and it's a podcast, and she's one of Brene's top Dare to Lead trainers. So I'm in this world of elevating women's voices to be heard a lot, and really helping organizations to be heard. And I'm flipping and starting to roll out some things to make it incredibly affordable and simple, because typically we're hired by people that keep putting off starting their podcast because it seems complicated and expensive.
Yeah.
And there are ways to just really keep it simple.
Well, that's fantastic. And, you know, I think podcasting is exploding right now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the number that are being produced, but there's an insatiable appetite for people to listen.
There is. And let me just give you a shot of reality. It is exploding, but it's mostly the marketing people that are making it explode. So depending on who you talk to, there's like, 2 million podcasts out there. There's 4 million podcasts out there. But the question is, how many are active?
Mm.
And active is defined as they've got at least 10 episodes, and they have published at least one episode in the last 90 days. And that number is less than 400,000.
Mm.
So there's a lot of people that start and don't continue because I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but my point is that it's still really early when it comes to having your voice be heard and jumping into it.
Yeah, fantastic. And like you said, your mission here is to allow others that platform and
Yeah.
that's a way to have light illuminated on them and what they do, which is just a way of giving back, and that, again, to your mantra about the way you want to live. So
Yeah,
very
and
exciting.
I also have to say, just because this may be a little self-promotion, but oh well, which is that what's great about audio learning, audio courses and learning, is that, like, when it comes to podcasting, people are doing video podcasts and audio podcasts, and it's about 15 to 1. 15 people listen to an audio podcast to one person that sees it. And the learning space, e-learning industry, is about $250 billion. Okay. And they expect by 2025 or 26 for it to be 450 billion. So I'm taking it upon myself to really help people actually put up their audio courses, not
Yeah,
video, but audio.
audio. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, yeah.
Makes sense. And, you know, people can do other things. They don't have to be physically glued to the screen while they're listening and,
Yep.
you know, driving or whatever the case may be. So I excited to see how Imagine Podcasting does. I'm sure it's going to change a lot of lives.
Yeah.
Um,
We hope so.
we hope so. Well, John, thank you so much for spending this time with us and on another episode. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to hear your stories and get to know you.
Well, thanks. It's really nice to be on this side of the mic. Let me tell you, Tracy. Thank you so much.